So by now I'm sure everyone has heard about Ronda Rousey on Steve-O's podcast, which I just found out about because of all this, so I'll be checking that out. But if you haven't, here's just a quick sum up. So essentially Ronda Rousey made a couple comments that have pissed off not just the wrestling community, but her fellow wrestlers as well. The first comment that seems to have really kicked us all off is, anyone who is outraged by me calling pro wrestling fake fights for fun has never been in a real fight. While you all are tiptoeing around bruising some pro wrestlers' huge soft egos, no one is thinking about all the real fighters you're insulting when pretending pro wrestling is somehow on the same level of realism. Yes, I understand. Wrestling 300 days a year, 4 years on end, is incredibly tough on the body and a difficult profession. But do you know what would happen if you get in 300 real fights in a year? You would be dead. So there's that, plus she basically said, fuck all wrestling fans, which, besides the fact that she's currently signed with WWE and she really shouldn't be talking about that, about her current demographic. Honestly, I can't disagree with that. I'm not really going to get into that because that's a whole other video. I could definitely see from a performer's perspective why they want to say fuck the fans, but that's a video for another day. But getting back to the former, by talking like that though, you're not just talking down to the fans who enjoy pro wrestling, you're talking down to the athletes, and yes, I said athletes, who have been long-time professional wrestlers. And you even have people like Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss call her out on Twitter for it. Even though I know she has people backing her up, like obviously Shayna Baszler, they're basically joined at the hip. And then you have Mark Henry also giving his words of support. But my main takeaway from this, I know a lot of people were getting angry with this and I don't blame them. I'm just kind of numb to it because Ronda Rousey, this is who she is. Ronda Rousey never cared about pro wrestling. I'll say it again, she never gave a shit. And to really reach that point, this story kind of begins before she lost to Holly Holmes. In fact, let's talk about where Ronda was before she lost her first UFC fight to Holly Holmes. She was honestly at the peak of her life. I know a lot of people don't like labeling, oh, this is when person reached their peak. Look where she is now. Look at where she was. She peaked. She was UFC Women's Champion, undefeated. She gave media coverage up the wazoo. In fact, she was basically the face of femininity. I've seen many promos, trailers, whatever you want to call them, basically talking about how women's strength, women's resilience, and showing Ronda Rousey. She was basically the face of feminism. Hell, at the time, I'm assuming she still does this, I haven't looked into it, she used to message women on forums, talk about women's well-being, women's sexuality. She was basically the uber feminist. And honestly, no one had a problem with it. The only people who had an issue with Ronda Rousey at that point in her career were the people who didn't like her trash talking. Which honestly, if you're an avid UFC watcher, that's half the fun. So Ronda Rousey was well respected. She was 100% fighter, 100% media influencer. Then what happened? She lost to Holly Holmes. Now most people expect her to get back on that horse, come back swinging, and retake what's hers. Instead, she went on Ellen, started crying, talking about wanting to kill herself, and then made the comment, I was thinking about committing suicide, then I saw my man walk through the door, I have to have this man's babies. Now think about who this is coming from. This is coming from the fighter Ronda Rousey. This is coming from the woman who basically spewed, women aren't just objects for men. Women are more than their lady parts. Women can be strong. Women are tough. Women are resilient. The moment she lost, she started crying, talking about killing herself, and talking about the only reason that she has left to be alive is to have babies. Now, I know some people say, oh, she was joking. She was joking. She was tearing up. She was bawling her eyes out, talking about killing herself. And if the whole babies thing was a joke, which it wasn't, seemed very natural. In that case, she's just the worst comedian ever. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking two things. First, Ben, you sound like an uber feminist. I didn't mean to sound like one. But second, you're probably thinking, why are you telling us all this? Because this actually showcases a couple things for us. One, it showcases Ronda Rousey's very emotional. That's important to remember. Two, when things get hard, she drops all social responsibilities and just kind of retreats back to her, quote, family, using the I need to go back to my family excuse. First of all, using the word excuse isn't right. I know Ronda has said before that she wants to start a family and stuff like that, and that's her right. And in fact, after she lost her second match in UFC, she retired. Everyone thought she was going to go have babies with her man, like she said she was going to do in Ellen, and that she was leaving the UFC on a high note. Even though she lost twice, she was still Ronda Rousey when she retired. Then what happened? She shows up in WWE, which honestly put a bad taste in my mouth for two reasons. One, she was just talking about how she wanted to go have kids, and that's why she was leaving UFC, which the fact that she pops up in another company just makes it seem like she was running away. Secondly, she's actually talked shit about wrestlers before. She has called it fake before, but hey, she was a longtime fan, so I guess she gets a pass. And the problem is, she was put in WWE, she was put in a very prominent spot, even though, like, after the first ever female Royal Rumble, whenever Asuka won, everyone was celebrating Asuka, they bring her out, yeah, congratulations Asuka, yeah, pushed to the side. Spoilers, you are gonna lose your Mania match anyway. It's all about Ronda. Ronda points at the sign forever, and then she gets a match against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon with Kurt Angle as her tag team partner. She gets pushed to the moon the moment she gets put in there, after saying that, oh, I want to start from the bottom. Yeah, no, that didn't happen. And then she just kind of went on with her wrestling career. Now, for her credit, Ronda learned very quickly, and Ronda was a very entertaining wrestler for a while, until the fans started to turn against her. After a match with Charlotte Flair at a Survivor Series, she got booed out of the building, which isn't uncommon when WWE puts a babyface, Ronda being the babyface in this scenario, to wrestle for the title when they want a different babyface in. At the time was Becky Lynch. Now, Ronda, as we established before, she's very emotional. After she left the ring, which, by the way, the match was really good between her and Charlotte Flair, and I do get her frustration, but she basically went up the ramp, told off a fan who said something to her. I couldn't find out what the fan said, but he basically called him less than a man, told him off. She marched up to the top of the ramp, turned around, tears in her eyes, and just glares at the crowd. Now, a lot of people say, like, oh, she was selling. No, that was too real. Then fast forward to WrestleMania 35, where she loses her belt to Becky Lynch in a really awkward roll-up that people suspect Ronda was trying to sabotage the match or something. I don't know about that. I'm not going to get into that. But basically, she lost her belt after holding it forever. Then she slowly disappears from TV. Now, Ronda was a little vocal during this quiet time. Basically, like, you hear whispers that she had problems with the way she was being handled, problems with people backstage, that she loathed the fans, which goes back to her emotional state. Ronda is very emotional, and when people don't look at her the way that she wants to be looked at, she seems to get upset. And this all ends with the current Steve-O podcast, where she basically said, wrestling's fake, fan sucks, I want to go back to my family. If this sounds familiar, it should. This is similar to her behavior after she lost to Holly Holmes. She basically started whining, things aren't how it should be, I want to go home, I want to have babies, and now she's basically doing the same thing here. The fans aren't treating me the way I want to be treated, I'm doing fake fighting, people don't respect my fighting background, I want to go have babies, I want to go back to my family. So with this in mind, I'm not surprised that she said this. In fact, I'm surprised WWE picked her up at all after the UFC stuff. Especially because WWE, especially in the past few years, been really pushing women's wrestling. I think after those Ellen comments, they'd let her on the roster. Again, I'm not a feminist. I know I sound like one with all this. Anyway. But honestly, I think right now, I think they got the best that they're going to get out of Ronda Rousey. And honestly, it was entertaining to have her on the roster. This is coming from somebody who wasn't a fan of her being on the roster in the first place. But honestly, I think it's time to let her contract go out or even just cut her loose now. Because I think if they keep her on and oh God forbid, they try to use her in any facet, then she might tell us how she really feels. And we don't want that. I know this makes me sound like a huge Ronda Rousey hater. And to a degree, I guess I am. But honestly, I was a fan of her before she lost to Holly Holmes, before she had that meltdown. I was even a fan of her. That match with her and Kurt Angle going up against Stephanie McMahon and Triple H was surprisingly good, and Ronda is a very good wrestler. This is proof that she can put her mind to something and just go at it. In fact, it'd be interesting to see where she is when she leaves WWE, but she's clearly fed up, and I think it's time to just end the cycle. She's just gonna keep kind of whining and whatever until she leaves. So let her go back to her family, or let her say she's going back to her family, turn around and go to Impact Wrestling. Anyway, on that note, man, this video is almost 10 minutes. If you made it this far, thanks for listening to the ramblings of a bald man. Have a good night.